A confident and defiant Eli Drinkwitz tells us that our worries are ridiculous. I'll tell you if I agree. Coming up right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And I have to say, I'm not surprised that the SEC went to a 9-game schedule in the future here for football. I am surprised by the timing. This news really kind of came out of nowhere yesterday afternoon. So I want to get into that topic and all the different various ramifications for the Mizzou Tigers coming up on the program. First, I want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner. Visit FanDuel and download the app today and start planning your futures bets now. And you know what? I want to start off today actually by doing something I don't normally do, but I think it's worth it here. I normally don't start by reading a bunch of quotes at the top here, but Eli Drinkwitz spoke at length recently about, well, the shuffling along the offensive line, and he had some pretty strong and confident words here. And speaking of confidence, he starts, quote, "I have a ton of confidence in Brandon Jones." Of course, Coach Jones is the Missouri offensive line coach. What he did with our offensive line the last 2 years that he's been here has earned him the ability to be flexible with how he does it. And so all the worry about, oh man, we're moving, that's ridiculous. Don't worry about it. I promise you, we know what we're doing with that. We'll be just fine if that's the direction we go. Cayden's been an unbelievable team player, slid out there. He's played left tackle. That's what he's always been, and he looks like a natural to it to me. So I think we'll be fine. And speaking about the media, he says, you get to see a small portion, and that portion you say, wow, he's moving at left tackle. Oh my gosh, they're pulling the ripcord. Something's wrong. Now, that's something he's been doing all summer. It's something that he's worked towards. It's something that when he first got here, he did it. He wasn't as comfortable, so we moved him to left guard. He played at a really, really high level, but now he's more comfortable and confident as a player, so it gives us the freedom to slide him out and say, are you still comfortable and confident as the left tackle? Because it's a little bit further from the ball, a little bit more in space, a little bit more isolation. Guess what? He's pretty confident. He's pretty comfortable, so that's a good sign, so I feel pretty good about it. And you know what, to Drinkwitz's point as well, not only has Cayden Green played a little bit of left tackle in college at Oklahoma in the Big 12, well, remember that was his position in high school as well at Lee Summit North. That's one of the original things that led me to believe that, well, Cayden Green would probably be playing left tackle at Missouri, was because of that high school position. And, well, in the pros, let's be honest, the interior guys get a lot more money than they used to, but the tackles are still the biggest breadwinners in pro football along the front side. But regardless, I think Cayden Green is sounding pretty confident himself. He continues here. This is actually Cayden Green speaking now. He says, all summer and spring I've been working right guard, left tackle, and left guard, and a little bit of center. So I've been working on playing everywhere. Last spring, I just transferred here. Obviously, I played my whole freshman year pretty much at guard. All the valuable reps were at guard, so obviously I was a lot more comfortable inside. And it was also a new offense, a new scheme, and even a new conference. So I feel like now I kind of know what to expect, so that'll kind of help me with the transition. So with all that being said, I think I understand the consternation. I really do. And again, I'm kind of riding the fence here a little bit because I do have such a lack of information. To Eli Drinkwitz's point, well, the people on the Mizzou beat are seeing just a small portion of practice. So with all that in mind, I don't want to assume too much. But I tend to believe Eli Drinkwitz in this particular case. The Missouri feels pretty good about Cayden Green at left tackle. Again, this may not be the ideal scenario for Missouri, but it may not be a panic time scenario either. From my perspective, I think as long as Cayden Green is a good left tackle, I think the Missouri offensive line is going to be good. If it turns out he can't hack it out there on the outside, well, and Missouri has to shuffle once again in season, well, that's a real big problem. I personally am betting on Cayden Green and Brandon Jones and the Missouri infrastructure here. I tend to think they know what they're doing, but again, obviously I understand anybody who's a little bit more on the negative side simply because, well, Missouri added a couple of tackles in the transfer portal, and so far it doesn't seem like Johnny Williams and Javen Richardson anyway have panned out, though Keegan Trost, transfer from Wake Forest, was penciled in as your starting right tackle pretty early in the spring, and he's remained apparently a stalwart. So, hey, at least you got one side of the ball seemingly solidified. And Eli Drinkwitz said in about, the past week or so on fall camp that he thought this was the best camp just in terms of productivity that Missouri has had so far. Also thought it was a hard, physical, demanding camp as well, and also the best camp they've ever had injury-wise as well. So apparently, you would think Eli Drinkwitz has found a pretty good balance here between, well, injury prevention and actually getting prepared for the season. Because, as I've said before, I just think that I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions, because I totally understand the instinct of modern football to get rid of two-a-days and to have less actual live tackling and live football, all that type of stuff. Of course, for years that's been the case with the quarterbacks. They've been wearing, the green no-contact jersey, whatever it might be. That makes quite a bit more sense to me than, quite honestly, a lot of other positions are designed for contact. You never want to get your quarterback touched in an ideal world. But of course, if you're an offensive or defensive lineman, you're a linebacker, you're a running back, contact is literally inevitable if you play those particular positions. And my point here is that while, again, I understand the instincts, especially for concussion prevention, all that type of stuff, but when it comes to especially all the other injuries in football, soft tissue in particular, I got to be honest, I don't know that this change of moving away from two-a-days, having fewer live reps, I don't see a lot of evidence that there are fewer injuries. Maybe we've done better with concussions. I could see that, but the idea that it seems like there are as many Achilles injuries, for example, as there's ever been. That's certainly the case in the NBA, where 25, 26-year-old guys like St. Louis native Jason Tatum are now occasionally tearing their Achilles. That was not the case. That used to be an old man injury for my entire life. Well, notably, NBA teams during the season don't really practice anymore. And again, understandably, you're playing 82 games a season. The game is more physically demanding just in terms of the miles, just the distance that these guys have to run and cover in the half court. It's just a little bit counterintuitive is my point, that in fact your body becomes used to things, becomes used to stress, becomes callous to it. Of course, not just a real obvious one is conditioning. Of course, running feels terrible. If you don't run and you go to try to run a mile, you might even throw up. It feels so horrible. But again, counterintuitively, the more you do it, the better it gets. And sort of like, hey, if you've ever go to a dojo sometime and watch some martial arts guys occasionally will be callousing up their hands by punching a board that is nailed into the wall, that type of deal. It'll just be going bang, 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 their knuckles over and over and over again. Well, again, if you and I did that, you don't do a lot of that type of stuff, you're going to be bleeding within about the first 2 hits onto that thing. This guy's sitting there for 30 minutes, never draws blood. Again, your body becomes used to this type of stuff, and your body, again, becomes used to football punishment as well. Your body becomes, and your legs, your soft tissues, your hamstrings, your calf muscles, all this type of stuff becomes used to hard cuts and running. And quite frankly, as I heard Booger McFarland point out the other day, the only time you're actually playing real football is when somebody is trying to knock your head off. And these days, well, that only really happens very, very infrequently. And for, almost a couple years now, I've felt like the 9-game SEC conference football schedule was inevitable, but I have to say I'm really surprised by the timing here. Announced yesterday afternoon, has Greg Sankey actually bent the knee here to the Big Ten? Who are Missouri's 3 permanent opponents going to be? Who do we want them to be? All the different angles coming up here in just a minute. But I do want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, by the way, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling MVP, a long shot division winner, or a Super Bowl champ, this is your moment. And by the way, Missouri currently plus 790 to make the playoff, minus 1,600 if you want to go the other way. Simply put, I like the Chiefs to win the division this season, minus 110, the AFC West. And apologies for not having these odds up here. For some reason, my internet is messing with me here. But I also like Travis Hunter to be the offensive rookie of the year. I think Jacksonville, they need Trevor Lawrence to be good. So I think Travis Hunter, they also need him to be good too after giving up a lot to move up there. So to me, all the incentives in the world for Travis Hunter to play a lot of snaps offensively. But regardless, visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. It's FanDuel. Play your game. I have to say I'd be pretty surprised if this was just simply a full capitulation by Greg Sankey and the SEC to the Big Ten and what it wants. But because, there's got to be something, I would think, that the SEC feels like it's getting on the other side. Perhaps the other conferences will agree to a similar structure here because, the SEC apparently is still going to, even with the addition of an extra conference game, still going to be keeping the scheduling provision that, hey, you have to play at least one other Power 4 team or Notre Dame each season. So with this, it's going to be 3 rotating permanent opponents. So you play home and away every other year against, in Mizzou's case, it sure as heck looks like it's still going to be Arkansas. Of course, the Tigers have played the Razorbacks in the Ozark Bowl every year since joining the SEC. So I think it's pretty safe to say that one's going to be alive. I think Oklahoma will be as well. I think the question is, who's the third one? Missouri reportedly wants Vanderbilt to be its third permanent opponent, by the way. Then, of course, there'd be a rotating group of 6. I get it for Vanderbilt, especially with proximity and a relatively easy opponent. That certainly may be one reason Missouri likes it. To me, it's really proximity is more important than anything here. One of the downsides, obviously, with Missouri joining the SEC was, not as many easy road trips. I will say Fayetteville, Arkansas, Norman, Oklahoma, it's about as relatively close as you're going to get in this conference. And Vanderbilt, obviously Nashville is right there as well, just about 6.5 hours down the road from Columbia. And hey, if you're St. Louis, southeastern part of the state, that type of deal, you're quite a bit closer than that. As far as the other options, who else could it be? Well, I'd say South Carolina is a real option. Of course, the Mayor's Cup is a thing, the Columbia rivalry, and it's been some interesting games over the years here. And of course, an old SEC stalwart there, and Missouri has continued to play South Carolina here each of the last in 24 and 25 in the post-division era here. So a decent amount of history with Missouri and South Carolina. When I look at it from South Carolina's perspective, I see Florida, Kentucky, and Tennessee as a lot of their rumored, bandied about three opponents. I would say, does Missouri not move the needle a little more than Kentucky does for South Carolina? See, it's not just about, well, who does Missouri like to play? Obviously, you got to look at it from the other program's perspective. And quite honestly, if I'm a South Carolina fan, I think the Missouri game probably has a little bit more juice than Kentucky. So I think that's a possibility there. I really do. Some other options. Well, the Texas Longhorns, I suppose, and Texas A&M, other former Big 12 mates there. I would like to maybe stay away from that a little bit more, especially, again, since those games aren't really drivable, unlike the game in Norman. Tennessee, relatively drivable, I suppose. Kentucky, more so. But again, I don't know that Missouri fans are getting that excited about the Kentucky rivalry. It seemed like we had something going there for a while, and then, well, once Kentucky gets off the schedule, suddenly, I swear, just that 1 year of not playing Kentucky almost feels like that rivalry has already dropped off a bit. But to me, I think it's either Vandy or South Carolina. Those are the two that I would like to see. Obviously, South Carolina is not particularly close, but there's a good history there and a fun game to go to, by the way, as I found out last year. If you can make the trip, Charleston, stay there and then drive to Columbia. That is my hot tip there. By the way, another thing to note here is that among those 6 other rotating opponents, again, the 3 permanent opponents, 6 rotating opponents, this according to the SEC's press release, each team will face every other SEC program at least once every 2 years, and every opponent home and away within a 4-year span. So that's a vast improvement. I will have to say that, is considering Missouri has not played Ole Miss in football since the pandemic, for example. 2019 was the last time Missouri played the Rebels. LSU, I believe, has come here twice, I believe. I think Missouri has played in Baton Rouge once. It's just been, it's not perfect. Let's put it that way. I think Missouri made its first trip to Starkville in football after all these years, too. So it'll just feel, I think, a lot more like a conference moving to 9. That's a real plus to me. One of the negatives, though, is that, to me, the odd number, having an unbalanced home versus away. Obviously, it's going to alternate every year. Some years you'll have 5 at home, 4 away, and vice versa, alternating years. But I don't love that, I have to say. The even numbers, it just makes it a lot cleaner schedule-wise. It just seems like every year we're going to be looking at, well, let's see who has that extra home game, and really factoring that into our projections in the offseason. Just not a huge fan of the odd numbers there whatsoever. But you know what? I am kind of a fan of the get out of jail free card of some of these weird future road games that Missouri has scheduled. I think the 9-game SEC schedule is actually going to be a perfect excuse for Missouri to get out of some of these things. I want to talk about that coming up. But guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, and maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, well, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. And Rugiet, by the way, dissolves on your tongue and on average kicks in about 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours. You'll also probably enjoy that it's completely online. Rugiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. So head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 10% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Last season, I had to endure being made fun of by my SEC squad mates for Missouri having to take, well, a rather odd road trip to UMass last season. Yes, all the way to Amherst, Massachusetts. Not something that an SEC program typically does. And I don't know if there was some penny pinching happening at some point or what, but I do know that Jim Sturk, former Missouri athletic director, was also formerly at San Diego State. Maybe there was some interesting dealings happening there behind the scenes. But from 2027 to 2031, Missouri does have 4 non-conference games already scheduled. And in 2027, at San Diego State, by the way, that's one of them. So that's kind of an odd game, but probably not the oddest one that Missouri has on the future schedule. 2028, Missouri is at Illinois. I think that one will remain. The Fighting Illini actually dropped out of their home game, the 2026 game for Missouri. So if indeed, I believe the SEC, this 9-game schedule coming into effect in 2026. So shouldn't be a reason to move any games in that case. But in 28, either the San Diego State game at home, SEMO, Northern Illinois, or at Illinois, one of those games is going to have to be moved or gotten rid of, I should say. San Diego State and Northern Illinois at home seem like the likely ones there. I brought up Northern Illinois. Well, in 2029, Missouri is scheduled to play at Northern Illinois. I'll bet you a lot of money that game is never going to be played. Axe, get rid of it. Finally, 2030, also Missouri playing at North Texas. No, they aren't. That's not going to happen. Spoiler alert. Also in 2031, the Kansas series will start up once again in Columbia, but at Colorado and at Florida Atlantic in the same schedule. North Texas at home as well. I think Tigers may well keep Colorado on the schedule, but at Florida Atlantic, I don't really see that one happening whatsoever. So, again, some weird scheduling quirks, and Missouri scheduled these games really far out. I think several of them in the Jim Sturk era, maybe even before. So, again, at Florida Atlantic, at North Texas, at Northern Illinois, at San Diego State. Is anybody interested in actually playing any of those games? Because I got to be honest, I am not. And I have a feeling Eli Drinkwitz and Brett Veach, the whole Missouri administration, going to take their get out of jail free card here. This looks like the perfect excuse to undo what was, in my opinion, some pretty odd scheduling by Missouri back in the day. Hey, thanks as always for being here on this episode of Locked On Mizzou. And speaking of scheduling, back, of course, with you next week, 5 days a week, and frankly, probably even a little bit more than that, maybe another bonus episode or two as well, just like you got, well, that live bonus episode yesterday on the pod. And yeah, with an actual game coming, yes, we're 6 days away, folks. Our long statewide lack of college football, that nightmare is finally almost over. And thanks for listening to this show. As always, definitely check out the Portal with Brian Smith on YouTube and wherever you get audio podcasts as well. And until next time, I'll see you Monday right here on Locked On Mizzou.